Welcome to the Be Well at USASK podcast. My name is Peter Headley. I serve as the Director of Student Affairs and Services at the university. This podcast is for all members of the University of Saskatchewan community. Each week, members of our community will join me to share ideas and provide guidance on all aspects of being well. And we'll be highlighting campus initiatives and resources designed to engage and support you. In these challenging times, we hope the ideas and information we share will help. In this episode, I'm going to be talking to Jocelyn Orb, who's the manager of the Student Wellness Centre at the university. We're going to be talking about student health and well-being and the supports available through the Student Wellness Centre. Well, welcome, Jocelyn.
Good morning, Peter.
So can you start off by telling me a little about your background, your role, and perhaps about how your team supports students' health and well-being?
Sure. So I am the manager of the Student Wellness Centre on campus. My background is nursing. So I actually went to school here at the U of S. I've been on campus for many years. And I'm fortunate enough to manage a unit comprised of a multi-disciplinary team. So we have a team of physicians, of nurses, nurse practitioners. We have a mental health nurse. We have a dietitian. We have fee-for-service providers such as massage and physio and chiro. And we also have a significant counseling team as well. So we are fortunate enough to have quite a large department of staff who come together to meet the needs of students on campus and their families.
And so I know well, because of the work we do together, the way that your team works has changed really beyond recognition to a completely virtual model. So typically people would find your team on the third and fourth floor of Place Royale. Perhaps you can tell me a little bit about how your team has adapted to a virtual care model and what that looks like, where students could perhaps engage with those clinicians now.
For sure. So yeah, we did, as campus closed, we had our practitioners move to working from home. So all of our healthcare providers, our mental health clinicians are seeing patients and clients either through WebEx or other virtual platforms, as well as over the telephone. So that transition has actually been fairly straightforward for most people, and apparently for the students as well. I haven't really received any concerns from students with the transition to a more virtual sort of care. I think it works especially well for clients with mental health concerns. Somewhat more difficult for some patients with physical health issues. So for those folks, we have referred them to other clinics in the community that have, their limited practices still open for people to come in and be seen physically. But for the most part, 90% of our students' needs are being met by our providers over the phone and over some sort of web platform. For students to access us, of course, not being on campus, we have the same phone number, we have the same website and the same email address, and we're actually booking appointments through email. We're finding that's actually a fairly efficient way of going about it. And that's students, it's still quite busy for most clinicians, so students are taking advantage of that. And the fact that, with the time of year, we do usually see a bit of a decrease in demand. So for the students that do remain requiring service, we want them to know that it's almost same-day access for most providers right now. So that transition, as I mentioned, to people working from home has actually been fairly smooth, and we're able to meet the vast majority of needs through our new virtual reality.
And so just on that, your team's going to be available. Nothing closes anytime soon. Your team's going to be available for the next few months.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we always have providers on campus. So even in summer months, there are times, of course, between intersession and summer session where there's not very many people on campus, but many students do remain in Saskatoon. And so we still have people coming in. We have people coming in all year long, other than, of course, that week between Christmas and New Year's. But yes, we're here Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4:30. And have partners with providers in the community. So if students are looking to be seen by a physician or, on the weekends or in the evenings, that we send them to the Mediclinic on 8th Street. So that's sort of our partner Mediclinic, that they're happy to see our student population when we're not available to see them.
Okay, well, that's great. Thank you. And you mentioned the counsellors being quite busy. I think that's what I heard. What types of things, concerns are the clinicians seeing, I guess, especially in terms of mental health?
Mm-hmm. So I did touch base with the team just yesterday and our clinical lead to see what those themes might be or if there's any commonalities. And she shared with me that, of course, people are feeling social isolation, right, in terms of being required to be at home, and for many students who were working, not being able to go to work. So there's definitely with that a sense of, she said, of imbalance and unease. So, quite unusual for some people, especially students who were quite social, who might be extroverts and really, enjoy those social connections. Having to self-isolate has been a big challenge for them. Lots of students are feeling some uncertainty about the future. So what the future holds for them in terms of, those that, haven't graduated and are remaining in school. What does the summer look like? Are they going to be able to find a summer job? They're feeling some financial stress or insecurity around that. Even, thinking ahead to the fall, what's the mode of delivery going to be? Are they going to be able to come back onto campus, or is it going to continue in the virtual realm? And finding that, they need to look at developing some new routines and rhythms with their changing environment. So just trying to find some comfort in being able to plan and have some predictability, I guess. Also, she reflected how for many students, of course, we all did, we found that the change requiring to self-isolate came about quite quickly. So this all unfolded fairly rapidly. And of course, some people will adapt more readily than others, depending upon, our usual coping strategies or our level of resiliency or what kind of supports we have. And some people are going to struggle with that. Just the rapid pace of change, it creates a challenge for many folks.
And I think I think what I'm hearing you say is also just the ability to be able to check in for people. And I know I was talking with Tracy Spencer on a previous podcast, and we were talking about people's permission to get in touch with the team. What would your message be to students about whether they should call, whether they should make an appointment with any of the clinicians right now?
Oh, absolutely. Our clinicians are ready and waiting, and this is why we're all here, is to support our students. So we really do want students to reach out and not to suffer in silence, or to think, well, this is just temporary, and I'll be feeling better in a few weeks. It's okay. Just as I mentioned, we're booking appointments through email, so it's really quite easy. We ask students to just email the student.wellness@usask.ca email account, and we're able to respond within the hour and get those appointments booked. So yes, we want students to not hesitate to reach out for support.
And how about students who might be experiencing physical symptoms at the moment, potentially connected to COVID-19? What would your advice be if people are experiencing physical symptoms in any way at the moment?
Well, they've got two options, and I think I would stress number one, being probably the most efficient, would be to phone the 811 number. So that's the provincial health line that we've been referring people to if they have any questions about COVID, or if they're concerned that they might be symptomatic. There's also that assessment tool on the Government of Saskatchewan website, where you can actually go through the tool and answer questions about your exposure history or your symptoms. And, it tells you essentially whether or not you should call 811 or your family doctor to book in for testing. So first option, as I mentioned, is to call 811, the provincial health line. And the second would be, especially for those students who are familiar to us, if we're their family doctor, by all means, they can call us or email us, and our physicians can do that screening for them as well. So the testing centers in Saskatoon, there's two now, both require referral. So people can't show up or present at those assessment centers looking for testing. They either need to be referred through the 811 line or through a family physician.
So we'll put all the details of that in the details below the podcast. But that's great, thank you. Mm-hmm. And so I know that you receive quite a lot of questions from students to the Student Wellness email account. Can you share some of the most common questions or concerns that are coming up right now, and maybe your responses to them?
For sure. Yeah, it's a very busy email account. So we have staff watching it all day long. As I mentioned, we're using it to book appointments, but we also do get a lot of comments and questions. This time of year, it tends to be, questions about immunization, not necessarily this year, but usually around this time of year. Right now, I just did a quick check as to see what the most common questions were or have been for the last couple of weeks. And so the number one question, of course, people are having is, how do I make an appointment in this different environment, knowing that campus is closed? And I think a lot of students have heard that providers are working from home. So as I mentioned, we want people to book in through that email account. There's a slightly different process depending upon who they're wanting to book in to see. So if they're booking in as a new client and it's for a mental health concern, by all means, email that same account, but we would book them in with an intake assessor so that person can do an assessment and decide and work with that student to determine who they should see in our unit. So whether they need to see a physician or whether they're looking to see a counselor or need to see a counselor, or the mental health nurse or the dietitian. So if it's a new mental health client, we'll book them in for an intake appointment. But for anyone who's known to us, anyone who's already been for appointments with any of our providers, they just email that address and our reception staff will get back to them in quite a timely fashion and book them in for an appointment. So that is the answer to question one. How do I make an appointment? The second most common question is, how do I get a prescription? So, of course, we're used to going to see our family physician in person and talking about our symptoms and having a physical exam and then being prescribed a medication if it's appropriate. So our physicians are able to do the vast majority of prescriptions and assessments over the phone or through their web platforms that they're using. Especially if it's a refill, if they've seen you in the past, that's a really easy process to do virtually. If you're a new client and haven't been seen before, again, if it's for a mental health concern, they would go through intake and then book in with the physician, but they can still have an assessment either over the phone or through a virtual platform. The only pieces that would be more difficult, of course, if you're looking for a prescription, you're a new client and you have a physical ailment. So for those students, we would still book time in with the physician. The physician would do some screening, do an assessment, and then determine if they need to be seen by one of our partners, physicians in the community to have a physical exam. So it's just for those physical ailments that some of them, again, can be assessed and treated over the phone or over the web chat, but some of them actually do require a physical exam. So we'll assist the student to make that arrangement for them. The number 3 was, when will massage be available again? So students looking, especially, of course, as they're finishing up their final exams, probably feeling a lot of stress in their bodies. And in terms of when massage will be available, for those of us who saw the premier yesterday make an announcement and the chief medical health officer talking about the staged plan to reopen Saskatchewan, massage providers were listed on stage 2 of that plan. So that across the province, they will be opening up their practices again as of May 19th. I'm not sure if we'll be able to hit that target for our massage therapists just because campus still remains closed and we're looking to open up for more essential services. So we would need to make that assessment in terms of, is that an essential service and what would that look like and when would we have them back on campus? So unfortunately, I don't have an answer for that question today, but it's definitely top of mind and something that we will address. And as it becomes available, we will make sure to message students so that they're aware.
That's great. Thank you. I know there's lots of conversations happening at the university, and much sort of to the same framing as the premier. I think its language was, it's not like flipping on a light switch. It's very much more like a dimmer switch that will gradually reopen services. And certainly those conversations are happening across campus to make sure that there's as many supports in the most responsible way. So one of the things that I'm asking all guests to share is just one thing that with these strange circumstances we're living in right now that they're doing to be well. Maybe that's something that brings them joy or a sense of connection. What would be that thing for you right now, and how do you find it helps you?
I think the number one thing for me throughout this, and something that I've always made use of or relied upon as sort of a coping strategy, is to get outside. So thank goodness winter's appears to be finally over. I don't anticipate any major snowstorms in the near future. But getting outside and moving my body, going for a walk. I'm fortunate enough to live right next to a natural area. So I get out every day and just have some quiet and some fresh air. And now is the time to do it because most of the snow is actually gone and the birds are out and flowers are starting to bloom in some of our prairie landscapes. And I think for me, that's the number one way where I can ground myself and to get some perspective, which is really important in this time. Just recognizing that how much change we've all been through. And I would recommend that really for anyone who doesn't have any mobility issues, to get out and move your body and enjoy the change in weather.
Yeah, that's definitely been something that we've been doing. I think that I felt in many ways that actually the cold weather was a bit of a blessing for a while. But I think it's been so important, in recent days that it's become warmer and people have been able to be outside responsibly, socially distancing. No, I think that's a really important one.
And what about you, Peter? What do you do to?
Well, I have 3 young sons, so we stay busy. I guess a couple of things. Lego has been a huge thing. So even at my desk right now, as I'm talking to you, I have a pile of Lego. And I've been doing quite a lot of noodling around with Lego, even during meetings, just to sort of stay engaged. But yes, we've been doing a lot of that. And I also taught my 2 older sons to play chess in the last couple of months. And so we've been playing a lot of chess. That's been really good. It's been a kind of really mindful, sort of focusing thing to do. So I think just staying engaged with them and really just making sure that I'm shutting down at a certain point in day and I'm available to my family, all those kind of things.
And that's a really important piece when you as we move to sort of a virtual landscape and being on our computers at home all day to try to maintain your sense of work-life balance too.
Yeah, absolutely. I know how easy it is for me to roll on and do a few more emails and a couple more things. So really, it does require discipline. And we've and Disney Plus is something that we're doing also. And we just finished The Mandalorian and the boys loved it. So even just finding joy in those kind of things, which is just pure escapism, but in the best possible way.
Yes, we just finished a Harry Potter marathon. So
well, there you go. Yeah. So is there a final thought you'd want to leave people with?
Yeah, I guess just in terms of I talked about how sort of rapidly these changes occurred, and just to remind people, and I think Tracy Spencer mentioned this in her podcast as well, but just to acknowledge that this is still it's a temporary situation. This is a contextual circumstance, and we don't want people thinking or having to imagine that this is a new normal. That's certainly not the case. This is a temporary situation that we're all going to have to manage through together. And you know what? Most of us are really in the same boat. So we're having a shared experience, and there's some connection in that, right? So we don't want people to feel that they're struggling on their own. We really do want people to reach out and connect with friends or family, however they do that through virtually. And looking at some of the information now coming out from the province, talking about reconnecting sort of with smaller groups, still maintaining physical distancing, but talking about, actually being able to spend time with other family members that maybe we haven't seen in the last number of weeks. So to take advantage of those times and those places where we can reconnect with people and to come together.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I think absolutely gaining perspective, making those connections, but also reaching out. Those are all hugely important things. Well, listen, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I know your life is busy.
Well, thank you for asking me to be part of this. It was a great opportunity to talk to you and to reach out to hopefully to students who listen to the podcast, and to make everyone aware of our services and that we're still available to students, and that we're really wanting to see them or to chat with them over the phone. So we want them to make use of the services that are available.
That's great, thanks. And I hope we can perhaps speak to some of the clinicians from the Student Wellness Centre in future episodes.
Absolutely. That's a great idea. I'm sure they'd be interested.
Thanks for listening to the Be Well at USASK podcast with me, Peter Headley. And thanks again to Jocelyn for joining me and sharing. Registered students can connect with the Student Wellness Centre team by phone or by email. The links are listed in the podcast details. Please check in again for further episodes and more content related to USASK supports. Please like, subscribe, and share this podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. Please post comments and questions, and we'll look to include them in future episodes. Also, if there's a person you'd like to see as a guest or a topic you'd like us to cover, please let us know. In the next episode, I'm going to be talking to Jennifer Drennan, the Director of Programs and Operations at the College of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies at the University of Saskatchewan. We're going to be talking about some of the challenges graduate students may be facing in the current situation and the supports available to them on and beyond campus. So until next time, stay safe and be well.